Hello, my name is Scott. I'm from America and I've lived in Japan 9 years this February. My first week in Japan. Well, probably you're going to hear this story a lot today on this podcast, and I've heard this story a lot from different people because it's a great story. It tells you all about the wonderful, brand new, exciting things that you're going to learn about, the culture you're going to absorb, the language follies you're going to go through. There's some funny parts, there's some sad parts, there's some exciting parts, all about learning all these brand new things that you're all new to. And my story is going to cover none of that today because you've heard that story before, probably even in this podcast. My story is going to deal with crazy people. My story is going to deal with drama. And it's going to be not your average first week in Japan. Let's start with what company did I first start with? I'll say it loud and proud. I started with Nova. They hired me back in America, where I'm from, in Florida, and I was waiting about 6 months before I got my visa approved and was heading over to the land of the rising sun, the big red dot, where I landed in KIX airport, was met by Nova representative who would help all of us off the plane and find our apartments. Now, that was the thing. You see, you didn't get to choose your apartment, you didn't get to choose your roommates. Nova chose all that for you. They even chose your location that you would be working at. So, anyone who wants to yell at me about choosing bad roommates, you can't, because I didn't get to choose them. So that's what this story is all about. Bad roommates and sweet mates too. And by sweet mate, I mean the apartment connected to our apartment, living next door to us. And this was my first experience having to be set up with roommates who I did not choose. And lucky for me, one of my roommates was a very nice German man named Maximus. Maximus was a great guy. He was a history buff. He had a PhD in the history of all different types of wars throughout the world, and eventually went on to leave Nova and teach at another university somewhere in Germany. Very intelligent man. Very nice, very proper, very polite, very social. And then there was Todd, my other roommate. And that's who this story will mostly be about, Todd. Now, I met Todd as soon as I stepped on board our flight to Japan from Atlanta Airport, and already I knew I was in for a bit of an interesting character. You see, Todd was drinking the whole flight over to Japan, which is a 21-hour flight, so that is about 21 hours of drinking. Yes, those tiny bottles that you can order on the flight, he was downing them left and right. Now, he was telling me a little bit about his life, and it appeared to be quite a checkered one, I think is the nicest way I can put it. And it was through bottle after bottle of this whiskey that he kept buying on the plane that it became this more and more slurred story of how he was running away from an ex that he had married because she had stolen his money, and he was in an abusive relationship with another girl at the same time that he was cheating on the ex, and that's why she was stealing all his money. But also the girl that he was cheating on her with was abusive to him, and he was just running away from all that now at the age of 40, which there's nothing wrong with starting your journey to Japan later in life. I started when I was almost 30. But the thing about Todd was he was a angsty teenage boy inside of a 40-year-old man's body. And it was very apparent of this when I was even on the flight with him over here, just via conversation. Now, I'm not one to ever try to start drama with a roommate because you've got to live with that person. Work and roommates are not places to start drama because then you've got to enter that tension every day. And I'm not interested in that. I want to live calmly. So I was as polite as I could possibly be with Todd. I never started a fight with him, never actually got into a fight with him about anything, but he was quick to start fights with everyone because this man had a massive chip on his shoulder and so many issues that nobody wanted to subscribe to. Now, this wouldn't be such a bad thing if it wasn't for the chemistry that he had with our suite mate. And our suite mate was Chris. He had a few other roommates there, but they're inconsequential to this entire story. We're going to talk about Chris. Now, Chris was a nice guy. Chris was a genuinely nice dude who had some of the same interests as me. He liked role-playing games. He liked Warhammer 40K, which if you know what that is, then we have a brotherhood. He liked lifting weights and MMA fighting. And now all these combinations of things are all interesting things, but they're an odd combination that not a lot of people have. So since we both had them, we became buddy-buddy right away. I thought Chris was a good guy. Now, the only flaw, the only character flaw that Chris had was that when Chris drank, Chris became the Hulk. And by that, I mean he literally became like a different, angry, muscular wrecking machine. There was nothing that could calm him down. There was anything that could make him angry. It was just an incredible situation, the flip. But I did not know this because right away when I met Chris, he told me he did not drink. And he told me he wasn't drinking because of the same reason I wasn't at the time when I first got to Japan, and that was mostly due to money. I love myself a six-pack. I love myself a nice glass of vodka, but I also like to save money and survive and eat more than I like to drink. So that's what I was doing. And so was Chris. You know, good on him for that. Fair enough. Now, as our week got on and we got our first paycheck that week, we actually did get into some money. So we started to explore the town. And it was fun. There was so many things to do, so many people to meet, so many things to eat. We had takoyaki for the first time, which is a very, very well-known Osaka dish of gooey dough type stuff wrapped around octopus pieces, and it was very delicious, very good. It was the freshest octopus I had ever had in my life, to the point that it wasn't a chewy, rubbery mess. It was actually delicious. And then there was okonomiyaki and so much more. We were having a great time with that stuff, and I was meeting lots of new friends, not just Japanese friends, and not just me, myself, meeting friends, but Chris too, my other roommates, Chris's other suite mates as well. Everybody making new friends, making new places to go, new acquaintances, and even from other countries that weren't Japan. I was meeting people from New Zealand for the first time. I was meeting people from Spain and France for the first time, who had come over there to teach language as well. Meanwhile, Todd is still in the apartment, and he hasn't made any friends, and he's been showing up late to work, and some days even missing work because he drinks quite heavily. In fact, some might even say he has a bit of a drinking problem. Now, a six-pack here or there, like I said, it's not a big deal. I could easily down one of those tonight probably if I wanted to, but a six-pack then leading to an entire bottle and a half of world's cheapest whiskey, the absolute gut rot, bottom of the barrel whiskey is what he would drink every night. So we're talking just starting with a six-pack and then dipping into an entire bottle and a half of hard liquor after that. So every night, Todd became this person who could barely stand up, walk, or talk, or move around our apartment, just spewing these issues he had. He just would lash out at anybody. The kind of guy where I remember one time I walked into my apartment, unlocked the door, walked in, and the first room you go into is the Genkan, the area you put your shoes in, then a hallway, then the shared room, living room, den, whatever you want to call it, that everybody shares, and then we all have our own personal bedrooms. I walk in there one day and he starts yelling his head off at me. Don't you knock before you come in? Don't you tell someone you're about to come in? Don't you at least call before you're about to come back to your apartment? And I was just like, sorry, this is my apartment too, right? Like, we're all sharing rent here. We have to because Novum's made us. Yeah, but it's just rude. I can't believe you're doing this to me. Just walking in here when I'm trying to enjoy some private time. All right, man, I'll go to my room. And that's what I did. And that's usually where I stayed when I got home because Todd freaks me out. He was a weird guy who had, like I said, just a massive chip on his shoulder. He needed to get that thing checked out. It was infected. So this, for the most part, is something that Maximus and I can handle. We're really not that bad with it. But one night, Chris finally has enough money to drink, and he does. Yeah, he's allowed to, you know. He's his own man. He can do it. He's a big boy. He can drink big boy drinks, and he does. But we realized that after he got drunk, his true feelings for Todd started to come out, and these were not good feelings. These were not happy feelings. I guess he hadn't mentioned it during his sober time, but a feud between him and Todd had been brewing at work, after work, in between, in his head. Now, Todd was a rude guy. I'm not making any excuses for him. And he could make damn near everyone angry. I would get angry around this guy too, but I knew I only had to live in that apartment as long as it took me to find a new apartment, and then I could get away from Todd. The rationality of this, of course, escapes Chris when he is in an inebriated state. And all the spirits do the talking in his head instead. And by spirits, I mean drink. I don't mean ghosts. So, that's the point we're at now. And we realize he's just spewing this absolute rage about his feelings for Todd this night that we're going out with Chris while he's drinking. We're taking him to bars, we're taking him to clubs. All Chris can talk about is, can't stand Todd. I'm going to ruin that guy. I'm going to destroy him. I'm going to punch him in the face so hard. I'm going to crush his skull. And like, we're just like, whoa, man, holy cow, dude. All right. So we call the sweet mates back at my place, and we call the sweet mates back at Chris's place. And we said, guys, look, we've got a bit of an issue here. We've got to keep Todd and we've got to keep Chris away from each other all night. Okay? Someone come over here and sing the Hulk a lullaby so we can calm them down. That wasn't happening. We weren't going to be able to do that. But we knew if we could just wait till Todd drank enough that he would pass out and go to sleep like he did every night, and then we brought Chris home, their paths would not cross. Now, if we didn't do that, there was a chance that Todd may be outside on the balcony drinking or out in the hallway drinking like he normally did, and to get to his apartment, Chris would have to pass by him. Imagined fight would happen, okay? So this is what we're trying to avoid. We're doing our best as friends, looking out for friends, and just even people who aren't our friends, we don't want to see anybody get their face beat in, all right? And that's what we do. We do pretty well. We keep them away from each other, and Todd passes out. Maximus calls, lets us know Todd's passed out. You can bring Chris home. We do that. It's pretty late. It's like midnight already, so of course he's passed out. And we're going to make sure Chris heads off to bed. And on the way home, though, something really bad happens. Chris's girlfriend calls from America on Skype and breaks up with him on the way home. So now, if Chris wasn't already enraged, Chris is now at level 11. He is beyond enraged. He is foaming at the mouth. So it's like we're trying to drag this like ravenous, rabies-infested bulldog home to go to sleep. And we get him in his apartment. We get him into his room. We get him to where he's just like a mix between raging, drunk, and half falling asleep. And we think, okay, if we just leave him in this state for the rest of the night, he's going to work himself into a stupor and fall asleep. Todd's already asleep. He's not going to suddenly wander into Chris's apartment and nothing's going to happen. We're pretty much safe here, even though Chris is in a bad way. And that's what we do. We get them away from each other. We're keeping everything safe, and everything's good. 2 a.m. 2 a.m. I'm waking up by a yelling in the hallway. I'm woken up by shouting in the hallway. I'm woken up by very loud voices and the sounds of pushing and scuffling and something strange outside my apartment. I hear a booming voice, and it's Chris. And he declares that he is going to expletive, pick Todd up and expletive, throw him over the balcony in the hallway. Now, that's about 14 stories down. Todd would be a red pile of goo. And Todd starts shouting back at him that he's going to stab him in his sleep. We finally step outside and are able to somehow drag these two off of each other, and we're just amazed. First of all, Chris is a monster. He's a big dude. He is large, muscular, tall, and you wouldn't want to pick a fight with him. Todd is much older than Chris, 40 years old. You can still be pretty spry, but let's just say Todd hadn't taken very good care of himself. He's rather on the short side, rather on the pudgy side, rather on the not having all his teeth and hair side. So he doesn't really look like a fighting specimen. Let's put it that way. Hopefully, it's the nicest way I can put it. Um, so we're even surprised that Todd threatened him back, but whatever. They're both drunk out of their stupid barbarian minds. Let's put them back to bed again. And that's what we do. The next morning, we wake up about 9 a.m. to more yelling. And this time, we come in to find in our suite mate's room, Chris's room, next to us, Todd is holding a knife over Chris's throat, threatening to kill him, and we catch him in the act. He quickly puts it away and pretends like none of this is happening. We're all flabbergasted, kind of like, what are you even thinking? And of course, right after that, our friend Chris decides to go report him to Nova HR. And the rest of us kind of do the same thing. I guess we all report it in our own way. Really, we should have gone to the police, but none of us knew enough Japanese to even know what we should be doing or going or who we should be talking to. We were so brand new to the country. It's the first week. This is my first week story. And we reported as much as we could to the only English speakers we knew, which was our job. We didn't know what else to do. We were kind of scared, too, out of our mind. A man is wielding a knife in our 2 apartments. What do we do? So they immediately move Chris out to a new apartment. We figured they're probably going to fire Todd. They do not. They keep Todd in the same apartment. He is not fired. They just say, well, he says it's not true, so we believe him. We're going to keep him there. And yours truly is looking for a new apartment that second week in Japan. Ending my first week in Japan, living next to crazy people. That is my first week story. I hope, for goodness sake, your first week is far more calm than mine. If you like what you listen to here, please give my channel a chance on YouTube. It's called Unrested, where I've got many stories like this. Until then, I hope you listen to the rest of this wonderful podcast, and I want to wish Kevin a very happy 100th episode podcast. Have a good one, guys.